Once upon a time, there was a kingdom like no other. A kingdom ruled by its own subjects, with no kings or queens, where the subjects were ably guided by the great warriors of the land, who protect them from every threat and enlighten them with precious knowledge that would help them become rulers of their own land. It was a kingdom that did not need a ruler. When the people of this kingdom wish to play, they make their own toys. When they wish to eat, they run their own kitchen and decide on their own menu. When they desire entertainment, they sing their own songs, celebrate their own art forms, and enact their own plays. How harmonious a kingdom would be if all the subjects worked together in unity to build it. Here is a kingdom where there is knowledge not only in its books but everywhere in the air. Here is a kingdom where responsibility is learned and shared. Here is a kingdom like no other.
Having me, Priti, and thank you so much, Sarah, for that wonderful introduction. Appreciate it.
Happy to have you, and over to you, Raya.
Amazing, thank you. Well, hello everyone. As was mentioned in the introduction, I'm Raya. I'm the founder and CEO of School of Humanity. We're an award-winning online high school where learners learn by doing and having a positive impact on the world. So our mission with Tapas really resonates. I thought that, since we have about 20, 30 minutes together, I thought what better way to spend it than actually try to tackle some of humanity's grandest challenges. So over the next few minutes, I invite you on a journey of analyzing and tackling some of the world's most pressing issues in our society. So the first challenge I thought we could start by tackling is something that is on all of our minds, especially given some of the conflicts that we're seeing, regional conflicts we're seeing in the world today. So imagine that you were tasked with creating a plan for our world to accomplish world peace. Imagine you were organizing a team of humans whose goal was to tackle and maintain global peace. My question to you is, what kinds of skills, knowledge, mindsets would you need to make this a reality? What kind of professions or disciplines would you need in order to create a world where we had global peace? I encourage you to think about and reflect on that for a moment. And chances are that as you reflect on the kinds of professions and skills that are required, you'll realize very quickly that we cannot take a siloed approach to this challenge, but rather it's going to take a collection of different disciplines and a kind of interdisciplinary perspective to maintain global peace. So for example, we would need the psychologists to help us understand how we can overcome ego. We would need the artists to help us build empathy between different groups of individuals through the arts. We would need the politicians to help us understand how political systems contribute to conflict or world peace. We would need the historians to help us understand what the mistakes that we've made in history were and learn from those mistakes. Just a few examples to show you that it takes an interdisciplinary perspective to make this vision a reality. Let's look at a more futuristic challenge. Imagine that you were tasked with designing space habitats on the moon or on Mars or elsewhere outside of Earth in our solar system. Once again, I encourage you to think about and reflect on what are some of the dispositions, the knowledge, the skills that you would need in order to make this vision a reality. What kind of professions would you need to recruit in order to create a team that could design space habitats. Once again, upon reflection, we can see that it takes an interdisciplinary approach to tackle this challenge. So, of course, we would need the astrophysicists and astronomers to help us understand where in the solar system we could establish these habitats and how we could get there. But we would also need the ethicists to help us understand whether it's morally right to occupy a planet. We may need the politicians once again to help us understand how we would manage this habitat, the economists to help us build a new economic system in this space habitat, the biotechnologists and the chemists to help us build materials that would last in space, that would allow us to build and survive in space. And I could go on and on. Now, I chose these specific challenges because this is exactly our curriculum at School of Humanity. So I mentioned earlier, we are an award-winning American online high school. We serve learners from over 20 countries across 5 continents. And at our school, our learners learn not through traditional courses, but by embarking upon such interdisciplinary challenges. Every term, they choose one of these challenges. The first half of the challenge is educator-led as we take them through an interdisciplinary analysis and learning of this challenge. And the second half becomes learner-led as learners then begin to identify sub-challenges, investigate them, and tackle those challenges. And because of the interdisciplinary requirement of tackling these challenges, our curriculum is naturally interdisciplinary, right? This is because no single discipline alone can help us tackle climate change or the refugee crisis or even maintaining global peace, but rather a collection of these disciplines can allow us to do so. Now, even though we take this interdisciplinary approach, we still do map these disciplines to different standards or learning outcomes. But what we did is our team basically designed our own unique curriculum called the Human Literacies Framework. This is a collection of knowledge, skills, and mindsets that we believe that learners need in order to flourish in life, in order to contribute meaningfully to society, and in order to be prepared for the emerging workforce. They include domains such as flourishing, discovery, society, thought, action, technology, quantitative skills, and much more. And learners develop these outcomes, these literacies, in a completely interdisciplinary way. So, for example, we've seen learners learn geometry through design, improve their emotional intelligence through art, and learn economics by creating a society on Mars. Now, I want to take a moment to share my own personal connection with this approach. So, I actually did not come with a degree in education. I did my undergraduate degree in neuroscience at Boston University. And I was on this track where I thought I wanted to become a scientist and a researcher. And this was until, like many young minds, I worked in a lab and I realized what working in a space is like compared to actually studying about it through the textbook. And it's the power of the real world experience. But while I enjoyed the biological kind of basis of the brain, and like many traditional neuroscience programs, my program was based very heavily on the science and the biology and the neuroanatomy, I was also craving for a more interdisciplinary study of the brain. I was fascinated by neuroethics, looking at the ethical implications of what we're learning about the brain and how that applies to, for example, our legal system and free will. I was fascinated by neurophilosophy, which delves into the neuroscience of the self and consciousness. I was also really interested in cognitive neuroscience, the science of how we think and how we process different ideas. And last but not least, I've come to appreciate this interdisciplinary field of neuroeducation, which allows us to take findings from the brain to better inform how we teach and how we learn. So this was a craving that I had as a learner myself. And I guess the point I'm taking here is that it's not just about solving real world issues. It takes an interdisciplinary perspective to intellectually understand our world, right? In order to make sense of our minds, of the earth, of the solar system, and the nature of life, it takes an interdisciplinary perspective to be able to do so. Now, earlier last year, we had this amazing film get released, Oppenheimer. Now, comment in the comments if you've watched Oppenheimer, the film. Love to hear from you. And if you did watch the film, you probably saw something that I really appreciated about the film, which is that it was a really interdisciplinary film. So Oppenheimer goes into politics. You learn about the political issues at the time. It goes into history by going over kind of historical events. You also learn about human nature and psychology by seeing the cognitive dissonance that Oppenheimer felt. It goes into nuclear physics and chemistry by looking into the Manhattan Project. Um, and last but not least, it's a work of art. So you see the filmmakers utilize visuals and music in order to exemplify different emotions and events. So Oppenheimer is an excellent exemplification of how to understand our world. We have to take an interdisciplinary perspective to make sense of it. And it's just a great example of that. And this is just another example from our curriculum. In addition to the challenges, we also do these project-based skill units with our learners. And here, just to kind of, one of our favorite ones is called Designing with Nature, which is an interdisciplinary biology unit where we look at biomimicry. So we look at what can we learn from nature's functions and nature's patterns, and then how can we emulate nature's innovations in human inventions. It touches on geometry by looking at how nature uses shape to accomplish its goals. We look at biological systems, and of course, there's the entrepreneurial connection as well. So just an example of how you can teach even science in a very interdisciplinary way. So as you can imagine, the benefits of this are profound. Our traditional schooling system has been designed to kind of box knowledge into these subjects. This silos our thinking from a very young age and often can contribute into this tunnel vision. And it often ends up, even in the workforce, when you have the silos, it ends up with reinvention of the wheel, with reinventing ideas and missed opportunities for innovation. In contrast, when we have interdisciplinary thinking, it really contributes to new solutions, innovations, and broader understandings. And often innovations from one discipline can be applied to another discipline. An example of this kind of siloed thinking that we see often is a software engineer that designs a user interface based solely on functionality without considering the kind of psychology of the user experience and the product. So that's like a really common example. Another example might be the economists who analyze the decline of a local industry based on market dynamics, but they ignore the social cultural factors that contribute to those changes, right? So again, we see in the workforce, in research, in life, that this kind of silo thinking can really lead to a tunnel vision. Now, one of the key terms I would love to introduce to you all, to introduce to your learners, is this concept of a polymath. So a polymath is like a true interdisciplinary thinker. It's a talented human being that is amazing at more than one thing. So famous polymaths throughout human history include people like Leonardo da Vinci, who we have here on the left. Many of us know him as the artist who created Mona Lisa and The Last Supper. But he was also a pioneer in the sciences and in botany and hydraulics. He was an engineer that designed many innovative machines and, in fact, predicted many of the inventions that would come after his time. He was a writer. He wrote 13,000 pages of diagrams, sketches, writings detailing his different explorations, and really a true visionary. On the right, you have another polymath who's Ada Lovelace. Ada is known as a famous mathematician. She was recognized as one of the first programmers. She wrote one of the first machine algorithms. She was also a passionate musician, and she saw the potential of algorithms to generate musical composition, which bridged the gap between creativity and computation. So very early on, Ada Lovelace understood this interdisciplinary connection between music and mathematics, which also allowed her to be a visionary. She predicted that machines could manipulate symbols and data, foreseeing this future of computers. Now, polymaths like Leonardo da Vinci and Ada Lovelace aren't just humans of the past, they exist in today's world as well. I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to two modern day polymaths who are good friends of mine. On the left, you have Dr. Merritt Moore, who's a quantum physicist at Oxford, trained at Oxford. She's also a professional ballerina, and she brings together this dance and quantum physics and computers together through her dance with robots choreography. On the right, you have Chef Couve, who is who is one of the founders of the first supper clubs in Dubai and has become a really renowned chef in the region. He actually was trained as an architect and came from that background and that passion into cooking. So just to share, we often expect young minds to specialize. We set up an education system that asks them to kind of narrow down, and we have this perception that true success comes from this narrowing down and specializing. But actually, the most successful human beings are interdisciplinary thinkers. They're polymaths. So School of Humanity isn't the only education model out there for the polymaths of our world. We're part of a movement of schools and universities that are starting to really take this approach. So for example, Zayed University has a College of Interdisciplinary Studies with degree programs that are completely interdisciplinary by nature. In the London Interdisciplinary School, which is an accredited university in London, UK, the learners don't choose majors, they choose problems in the world that they want to solve, and they do so in an interdisciplinary way. You have the Green School and Think Global School in Bali's, which also have project-based interdisciplinary components to the curriculum. So this is really becoming a movement in the education system. One of the things I would love to flag to educators that are watching this, because chances are you've done something on the spectrum of interdisciplinary teaching before, is that traditional subject-based kind of schedules and curriculum is designed to be intradisciplinary. It's that siloed approach. You can have a multidisciplinary perspective. This is when multiple disciplines work on a problem independently and combine their findings. You then have cross-disciplinary perspectives where you apply theories from one discipline into another. Interdisciplinary is what we've talked about. It's when different disciplines kind of merge and collaborate together to solve a problem, blending different methodologies. But there's a level beyond that, which is transdisciplinary. It basically involves an approach where you allow this boundary of disciplines to completely disappear, and you lead to completely new perspectives as a result. So I just wanted to wrap up with a few strategies to introduce interdisciplinary education as a school. So one of the first things you need to do is go back to your standards, to your learning outcomes at a school-wide level, and make sure that you're developing transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary outcomes that go beyond the subjects. Secondly, it's really helpful to recruit educators who have an interdisciplinary perspective because they're able to develop interdisciplinary curriculum. Third, even if you can't change the core curriculum, consider introducing an interdisciplinary capstone project for your learners. Last but not least, we really recommend training your educators to develop something called T-shaped expertise. So T-shaped expertise is this idea that it characterizes an individual that has this expertise where the horizontal side of the T represents the breadth of their knowledge, and the vertical kind of part of the T represents a couple of areas that they've really gone deep into. So just as we need to ensure our young minds are developing this T-shaped expertise for the future of work, we also need to ensure our educators are developing T-shaped expertise as well. So one of the final things I wanted to share with you was one of my favorite examples of an interdisciplinary project. So what you're seeing here on the screen is the work of an artist called Rafik Anadol. And as you can see from the screen, he is essentially a medium artist. He's the pioneer in something called aesthetics of artificial intelligence or aesthetics of machine learning. And what he does is he takes these large data sets and he turns them using algorithms into these abstract, dreamlike environments. He's coined terms such as AI data dream or data paintings. And Anadol's art basically explores this intersection of technology and creativity. And as you can see, it's just such a powerful way to explore the ethical implications of artificial intelligence and the societal implications of it. And it's just a beautiful interdisciplinary work of art that brings in the STEM component as well. And I'm choosing to end on this note because we often, we hear a lot about artificial intelligence in today's world and what we can do to prepare learners for a world of AI, to prepare them to become responsible users and creators with AI. And this interdisciplinary perspective is absolutely crucial because really what we need is AI engineers and AI programmers who also can bring in the morality and ethics from an interdisciplinary perspective, right? We need them to be able to merge psychology and understanding of human nature and learning from history as we pioneer these incredible inventions for the future. So really, I wanted to stop here to make sure we've also left enough time for questions. If any of this resonated with you, please don't hesitate to follow School of Humanity on social media. You can follow our journey, our progress, and our insights. If you'd like to explore partnership opportunities, you can also reach out to me directly, and my email is on the screen. I'd love to move now into questions if we have any.
That was lovely, Raya. Thank you so much for sharing your insights about interdisciplinary learning and how you learn at School of Humanity. It reminded me of a story that I've heard, this narrative about the origin of zero, which one of the narratives says that zero originated in India. The It's truly transdisciplinary because the first origin was found in yoga, in the practice of yoga, where
Beautiful.
during meditation, the concept of shunya, which is to focus on nothing, is where zero originated or shunya originated. Then it moved to pauses in music that Pingala introduced. And from music, it went into astronomy, where the nothingness of the sky that people observed, that's where it went to. And from there, it moved into math. So, really, a story of transdisciplinary learning where zero went from yoga to where it has the place in math today.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And when I learn about things like this, I think about how amazing it would have been to learn this as a child in the education system, right? Like we just think of zero as zero, but imagine if you had a lesson that was interdisciplinary by nature that touched on all of these things, like where you actually did yoga and experienced zero, or then you moved into the science of it. But yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Another example that I could think of while you were
Yeah.
speaking was the Medici effect. I think you've heard of the Medici
Mhm.
family, who harbored a lot of the artists who were artists, they were thinkers, they were scientists, etc., which I think kind of gave the impetus for the French Revolution, and it gave that whole movement a lot of life, and then brought in the Renaissance after that. So they say that the Medici family was responsible because they harbored so many kinds of thinkers and
Mhm.
people, and that's how the Renaissance happened. So I think there are great examples in history to talk about transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary learning. So I'm really glad that you were able to highlight that. So, Raya, my question is, so the School of Humanity caters to the secondary grade levels, that is from ninth to 12th grades, right? Um, and this is something that is globally having students, and from across the globe, students are joining your school. So, how do you manage to provide a platform where they are able to interact and make sure that the social emotional learning also continues to happen?
Yeah, so the way that our schedules and learning experience is set up is that about half of the learning is completely synchronous in live online workshops, and the other half is self-paced and flexible. And for the half that is synchronous and in live workshops, as the name suggests, we never lecture during these sessions, even if they're online. We do tons of games, activities, discussions, mind mapping. They're really, really interactive sessions. And what this has resulted to is global friendships forming, a global community forming, learners even collaborating with one another on different projects. So we really see that interaction happening online, and it can form a really meaningful social community. Now, we don't believe that, or nor do we advocate that online learning or online socialization should completely replace in-person socialization. That's still very crucial, which is why we really encourage every family that joins us to ensure that they have some kind of a social plan, whether it's doing sports in person, whether it's joining homeschooling communities or other communities, so that there is that aspect to it. And last thing I'll share here is we've started to partner with um, learning hubs and learning centers around the world to offer a hybrid experience to our family. So in Bristol and now in Dubai as well, we have kind of hubs that we've collaborated with, where learners will go to the hubs for co-learning or for social excursions and experiences in person while being enrolled in our online high school. And it really gives you the best of both worlds.
That's brilliant. I think that's the model going forward, where you get access to both worlds, both virtual and
Yeah.
in person. So that's brilliant. Uh, so you mentioned that you were an American high school, so you follow the American standards, and students, once they complete their 12th in the School of Humanity, how easy or difficult is it for them to adjust to universities going forward?
Yeah, so we actually created our own set of curriculum standards. And that's the human literacies framework I shared earlier. We do benchmark them. So we've benchmarked them against the European, Australian qualifications frameworks. And we also benchmark our advanced credits against the American AP kind of subject areas. And so, we currently have years 9 and 10. Our 10s are moving into 11. So there's a few years before our first graduates move on to university. But we can already see that there's four different pathways that are emerging post university or post, sorry, School of Humanity. And we want to prepare learners for all four of them. So one is, of course, going into traditional universities. In those cases, we do issue a GPA-based transcript. Because we benchmark against the APs, if learners need to take the AP exams, they can. But really, a majority of our learners want to go to progressive universities that follow a similar model like ours. And I showed examples of some of those universities earlier, because we believe that if those learners are thriving in our high school, chances are they'll thrive in a project-based university as well. And then we also have two other pathways that we don't think schools focus on enough. That is, learners that want to become entrepreneurs that might not want to go straight to university. They might want to start their own venture or do a gap year. And the fourth is actually going straight into the workforce. There are career trajectories where you can do nano degrees, you can do certification programs, and actually work for a few years before going to university or in parallel to university. So we see it as important to prepare learners for all these pathways, not just traditional university pathways.
It's fabulous to see how the education sector is changing, and I think we are in India. We are at that threshold of change with the national education policy now giving us these different paths, like what you mentioned. I think we are also getting exposed to this in India, so
Right.
it's great to see that it's working elsewhere in the world. So it must
Yes.
work for us as well. So, this has been wonderful. Any last thoughts that you would like to share about where you think education is heading to? And then we'll wind up.
Yeah, I guess final thought is, I don't believe in a one size fit all model. And School of Humanity is right. It's the perfect school for some learners, and it might not be for others. And similarly, with all the other examples I shared, there's lots of different innovative approaches emerging. And what I hope is that we end up with an education system that has true variety, and that there's problem-based schools, place-based schools, nature-based schools, school challenge-based schools like ours, so that every human, every learner can find the option that is truly fit for them.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that is the hope for the world. And with that, I think we come to the end of the session. Thank you for sharing your email ID. If there are questions that come up post the session, we will share those with you and hope that you're able to answer those. It has been a
Definitely.
pleasure having you, Raya, and we look forward to many more great conversations with you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.